Welcome and thank you for all of your patience and all of your hard work this weekend.
Okay. Elder Nation Builder Kwame and I will pour libations, and then we'll have Lift Every Voice and Sing. After that, Elder Willis will do the evocation, and then maybe Elder Boy will be here by then.
No, he just peeked in at you.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He's going, surprise!
What did you say about
Elder Boy is in the house! Elder Boy is in the house!
Yes. Now don't be pouring no long libations because y'all know brother ain't that strong.
Can we stand for libations, please?
Hold on a second, we got Mama coming in. Mama Mahani.
just come. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
She ain't doing yet?
Okay. This part. Go ahead.
We would like to make an offering. We call it the Hetep Di Nasu. And in so doing, Hetep Di Nasu in Wasir, Ampu, Dief Peret Keru, Te, Hinquet, Ka, Ape, Shesu, Minket, Ket Nebet Neferet Wabet, In Anket Netcher, In Kayen, In Mahiu. And starting with me and working ourselves around the room, call out for our ancestors. And for those of you who remember the handouts that were given us on that Friday, excuse me, I got push-ups.
That's right. That's right.
On this past Nia evening, if you can call on some of those scientific figures from our past, from Kemet and onward. But I will start with those who helped to influence my life. So I call to Amos. I call to Imhotep. I call to Marcus Garvey. I call to my mother and father, Alan and Winnie Frederick. And you can work around this way, around the room. Call 4 of your ancestors.
Call Dr. Drew, Ferdinand Emmanuel, Maud Brown, Enid Ortens. Dr. Kensel Malcolm Payton, and Mary Simmons, and Jacob Simmons, and Esau Simmons.
Derek Pulliam, Lucy Sterling Wright. My great uncle Elijah will be named him Bub Jackson. Fergie and Douglas Poe, Charlotte Thomas, and Papa Towers.
My mother and my father, Evelyn, Louise, Howard, Dolly, Jerry, Aaron, Senior, Pierre, Tony Jenkins. Eleanor Brown James, Carol Franklin James, Eileen Rowena, Riley James, Rita Brown, Harry Brown.
James Haynes Sr., James Haynes Jr., Earl Haynes, Charles Haynes.
George Hill, Leanna Mason Hill, Eunice Gator Shields, Elijah Hill, and then there's Patricia Bath, Benjamin Banneker. That's 4. Come on, 4 ancestors and 4.
All right.
Grandmother, Bertha D. Gray. Grandmother, Maud Brown McNabb. Mother, Loretta E. Clark. And grandson, Randy Overson Jr.
Grandmother, Noella Gethro Stiles.
grandmother Lula Hutchinson Dorsey, mother Clara Stiles Dorsey, father John Jacob Dorsey, II.
Giving praise to my mother, Lily Martha Ford, my auntie Eva Ford, my uncle Don Ford, and Queen Mother Moore.
Then on to my mother, Julia Walker, who passed in 1985 at the age of 85, and my two second cousins that were school teachers, they all died.
I call forth Annie Mae Montgomery and Justice Montgomery, my mother and father, and Azalee, who is my second mother, and I call forth Chachette, who is the nature that deals with precision, writing, and knowledge.
I call on Geneva and Cleveland Brown, Margaret Ellis, and Malika Fakour.
Jay Edwards, Howard Johnson, Virginia Knighton, Sidney Wimbush, and Queen of Shetson.
Together, on the count of 3, we'll say Ma Karu. Boy, Senu, Kemetri.
Ma
Karu.
Shay.
Lord, thank you. This is bad.
Let us stand again, and we'll do lift every voice. Elders Alubala and Eunice, would you guys lead it for us?
Go to the back.
Lift every
Voice and sing to earth and heaven. Bring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise. How we forever stand true to our love, true to our we're going to do allegiance to the flag of the UNIA, written by Amy Jacquez Garvey. Here's to this flag of mine.
Here's to the flag of mine.
The red, black, and green.
The red, black, and green.
Hopes in its futures bright.
Hopes in its futures bright.
Africa has seen.
Africa has seen.
Here's to the red of it.
Here's to the red of it.
Great nations shall know of it.
Great nations shall know of it.
In time to come.
In time to come.
Red blood shall flow of it.
Red blood shall flow of it.
Historians shall write of it.
Historians shall write of it.
Great flag of mine.
Great flag of mine.
Here's to the black of it.
Here's to the black of it.
400 millions back of it.
400 million back of
Whose
it.
destiny depends on it.
Whose destiny depends on it.
The red, black, and green of it.
The red, black, and green of it.
Oh, flag of mine.
Oh, flag of mine.
Here's to the green of it.
Here's to the green of it.
Young men and women shall dream of it.
Young men and women shall dream of
They
it.
shots and shells for it.
They shall shells for it.
They shall sing of it.
They shall sing of it.
Waving so high.
Waving so high.
Here's to the whole of it.
Here's to the whole of it.
Colors brought and pole of it.
Colors brought and whole of it.
Pleased is my soul with it.
Pleased is my soul with it.
Regardless of what is told of it.
Regardless of what is told of it.
Thanks to God for giving it.
Thanks to God for giving it.
I say, and green. Red, black, and green. Red, black, and green. Red, black, and
Okay, if you turn to page 7, I'm going to read the invitation. So repeat after me. The voice calls forth the Great Spirit.
The voice calls forth the Great Spirit.
The creative power of the universe.
The creative power of the universe.
That gives and sustains all existence forever.
That gives and sustains all existence forever.
Let us adore a moon.
Let us adore a moon.
Who though hidden is the source of all life.
Who though hidden is the source of all life.
All power and all health.
All power and all health.
Let us hail Ray.
Let us hail Ray.
The sun, the highest visible manifestation of spirit.
The highest visible manifestation of spirit.
That rises on the eastern horizon as Kepra.
That rises on the eastern horizon as Kepra.
The self-creating one.
The self-creating one.
Who shines down at midday as Ray.
Who shines down at midday as Ray.
The eternally creating one.
The eternally creating one.
And who goes down on the western horizon as a tomb.
And who goes down on the western horizon as a tomb.
The complete one.
The complete one.
Let us revere Ptah.
Let us revere Ptah.
The nature and form creating one.
The nature and form creating one.
Let us call Wasir.
Let us call
To
Wasir.
whom we give our dead for life everlasting.
To whom we give our dead for life everlasting.
Jehuti, nature of good speech.
Let Jehudi, the nature of good speech,
Intelligence in writing.
intelligence in writing,
Teach or inform us.
teach and inform us.
Let us worship Nut.
Let us worship
The
Nu,
sky, the divine mother.
the sky, the divine mother,
Who stretches forth from horizon to horizon.
who stretches forth from horizon to horizon,
Giving birth to all that comes into existence.
giving birth to all that comes into existence.
Let us obey Ma'at, divine
Let us
sister.
Let us
Divine
obey
sister.
Divine.
Who imbues the universe
who
who views the universe
with order, harmony, balance,
with order, harmony, balance,
truth, justice, righteousness,
truth, justice, righteousness,
reciprocity, and love.
reciprocity, and love.
The voice calls forth the ancestors,
The voice calls forth the ancestors
who abide the Spirit,
who abide the Spirit
and the spirits of our yet unborn children,
and the spirits of our yet unborn children,
who will carry forth our seed
who will carry forth our seed
for eternity.
for eternity.
Now let this community unite
Now let this community unite
in the celebration of the African spirit
in the celebration of the African spirit
and the rededication of another cycle
and the dedication of another cycle
of Ma'at,
of Ma'at,
right speaking and right doing.
right speaking and right doing.
Ashe.
Ashe.
I'll go!
Amen.
I'll go!
Amen.
The black candle has just been lit.
And announcements. We do Qur'an here every second Sunday. The next one will be March the 8th and then April 12th. Divine Conversation will be February the 23rd and March the 22nd. On the 23rd conversation, we will be talking about this weekend. The Tawi ASCAT study group is every Friday here at 6 p.m. and we also have a Tawi beginning history class here every Friday at 6 p.m. There are Madhu Nature online study classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Who lead those?
Brother Bonotchi, Sin Bonotchi. The Tawi ASCAT, the Tawi Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, or ASCAT, we are looking for members. We are seeking new members. You can get Elder Mariba's books from Elder Alumala. Please sign up to help us here at Parank. You can see me. And on page 10, there are a list of businesses that Tawi members are involved. And then we have a couple of, well, are there any, before I do those, are there any announcements from the community? Nation Builder Kwame and then Nation Builder Hatip.
So next month's Quran will be we'll be getting taught by our babies. They're not babies anymore, but you know, our young men. Takis is still on, right?
Yes, sir.
Cleve is on, and Levon is on.
Might have a few more.
March 8th.
All right.
Here. Young men.
What's up? You want some young ladies? I would like to have some young ladies.
Young ladies.
All right.
Young
See
people.
what we can do. See what we
Young.
can do. I just wanted to say, because we went around, we did the ancestors. If anybody want their ancestors put on our daily toaster list, because every morning we get up and we toast the ancestors. Well, not every morning, but we toast them every day. So I'm inviting people. I heard some of the names, and that's on the list. But also, I want to talk to some of y'all who have Browns in your family, because we might be related. Just saying.
And on page 12, Warrior Ronnie Edwards' birthday, happy Earth Day, was March the 5th. Elder Clifford Bowie,
That's not it.
February 5th.
February the 5th was Ronnie's. February the 22nd is Elder Clifford Bowie's birthday. Elder Tony West's birthday
Don't say
is the 24th. Elder Philip Haynes' birthday is the 25th.
Oh.
Number Februaries, yes. And happy anniversary to Elders Aziza and Tony West. Another cycle.
50 more.
And Elder Clifford,
51.
I saw him sticking his head in the door. He told me, there he is, Elder Clifford.
There's all the Clippers. Now there he goes.
He's coming around.
I know that. Yes, that's the shit.
Ancestors are saying.
No, it's good, lady. Yeah, you good? You good?
They're okay. They're okay.
Yes, that's good.
Okay, Hotep, and welcome everybody. We've got a good full house.
Yeah,
Great.
indeed.
Really?
Okay, yes, sir.
I thought it always looked like this.
Okay. On page 3, I want you all to repeat after me. Okay? Let me praise the moon.
Praise him.
Ready, Brother Robert? Ready to sing out loud?
He read.
Okay. All natures are 3.
All natures are 3.
Amun, Re, and Ptah.
Amun, Re, and Ptah.
They have no companions.
They have no companions.
Concealing his name as a moon.
Consider his name as the moon.
His ray is a face. His body is Ptah.
His body is Ptah.
The cities of earth are established for perpetuity. Waset, you knew. And the city of the white wall. For eternity. A message was sent from the sky. And heard and you knew. Excuse me. And repeated in the city of the white wall. By beautiful existence. To be set in official documentation. Jehudis writing. Concerning the city of Amun. Which possessed their property. The matter was answered in Waset. A statement was issued. It shall belong to the 9. All that came forth. From its Amun's mouth. And the natures were established because of it. According to what was decreed. A message was sent. It shall slay and give life. And life and death come from it for everyone. Except the nature. Amun. Plus Re. Plus Ptah. Total 3.
On the back of your program, for those who haven't, the Tawi Parank of Columbus is committed to the following, and we list 12 things, starting from the all, how we are manifestations of the all, how our people recognize the spiritual nature of all African people, how we recognize the essential harmony of spirit, cosmos, nature, and African people. All the way down to this one, number 7, which is the use of African Kemetic texts. Let's start over. The use of ancient Kemetic texts as the major repository of our spiritual wisdom. That's the one we kind of keep in our heads for this month. And without further things we need to do, our message or our sabayet, our lesson for today is going to be delivered by Seba Sin Bonotchi Montgomery. And I will turn it over to him. He needs no introductions because everybody in here has heard or seen or talked with him.
Mama.
Saber.
Okay. No, this is fine. I want to say to everyone, I have had an excellent and very warm welcoming in Ohio. And I would like to make special note of Brother Orumala, that's where I had to stand with, and him and his queen have shown me outstanding hospitality. It was nice it's being there, because being there was like being home in terms of their home is full. You can tell when you're in their home that you're in a home of people who love themselves. And not only love themselves, but love themselves based on their Africanness. So just being there, it enabled me to just absorb, is what I'm always absorbing, and that is African spirituality. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Man, my reception here with my information also has been outstanding. And with that, I have to give a special note to Alona. Alona has been one of my longest students, and her work is amazing. She gets a lot of stuff done.
That's true.
So I really appreciate her. Like I say, she's been one of my longest students. Her commitment to this has been admirable. I mean, I've had people come, and they come with all type of enthusiasm. The minute they realize that, oh hell, I'm not going to be deep after a week of study, that I'm going to actually have to put in some work.
He said a week.
Right. Because we're used to looking at YouTube, listen to a lecture, and then going out thinking that they know everything. With this language, you're going to find that you can spend 5 years of study and still feel like you're a beginner student. And that's one of the hardest things I have to get the students to understand, is that you can't judge yourself in this. You just have to take the lessons, and soon the information makes sense in your brain. But until then, you always feel like that you're learning something that you're not learning, or that you're attempting to learn something that you can't. Now, also with that said, I was very inspired last night, and it threw me into a quandary, because I'm not really sure what I want to present today.
Uh-oh.
And let me tell you why. We went to the restaurant. We were in the restaurant, and some of you were there. And I was sitting at the end of a table, and there was a bunch of sisters was there, right? They were involved in the usual conversation that we're involved in, that I find tiring, about food and the food that we put into their mouths. And I think it was Eunice who noticed that I was a little bored, so to speak. So she made the suggestion that I move down to the end of the table where Kwame was. And what happened then is what inspired me. I'll say, I got down to the other end. They brought our food out, right? Kwame's wife said to him, his food was at 6 o'clock and 3 o'clock, right? And I said, really, Kwame, you missed something. Or I should say, we missed something about him, right? He gave us a perfect example. Kwame is one of my best students, right? He's blind. He can't see the glyph. But he makes my point. You do not see with your eyes. You see with your mind.
Right.
So what his wife was doing, she was operating as a complement. Not his eyes. Because he sees with his mind. So the only thing she was doing was giving him the orientation. But he makes my point, and that is, because we see, we fail to really understand the nuances of languages and how words function. Words make you from the inside out. But we so used to these dictionaries, these Europeans have got looking up dictionary words. What does the word mean? Words, you look at how they function and how they represent themselves in nature. That's the best way to understand words, because all words have a physical representation. And you don't have to see it, as Kwame has shown you, because it's in your brain. All of our activities that we look outside of us is really happening inside of us. And one of our problems is because we have eyes, we tend to overlook the power of the mind, because that's where everything happens at. So that was, when I, this morning, as I say, I get up very early. So, of course, him and his wife still sleep. So, but it gives me time to think. And that's when I came up with it. That like really, I need to do a presentation of something for Kwame that presentation is not for him, but it's based on information that he likes. So I have a presentation that deals with the concept of a metaphor. And metaphors, understanding metaphor enables you to determine truth in language use. Because, well, now, with that said though, the other presentation I want to deal with deals with African education, but also the concept of sejim. Because sejim is very important. It means to listen, hear, and obey. And with me, some of you may feel that I don't listen in my responses because I tend to cut people off and I be short. Let me tell you why. It's not that I'm not listening, but I have sejim. Now sejim means listened. That means I've already listened to and by that I mean this. A lot of times when I respond to people who deal with its religions, God, and food, I get kind of impatient. Why? I've heard it all. I heard all of it. So, and what you have to understand is this: once you understand a person's foundation that they use to understand the world, you don't have to listen because what comes out of their mouth is the same thing because they're using certain specific ideas to understand the world. Once you understand that, you know where they're going to come from. And not only that, so many of us follow these ideas and belief until I hear the same thing from people over and over and over and over and over and over again because we're not into new stuff. These European ideas have just have our minds so entangled. So I get kind of impatient with folks. It's not with anybody personally. It's with our overall condition. So I'm saying that to say, if I can be short, I love you. I love our people. That's why I do this. So have a little patience with me and try to sedge them and really understand what I'm saying. I think you will see that I'm offering you a broader perspective. Now I know you may say that that's awful. Did I have an ego or something like that? Well, I do have ego. Everybody should have ego. But I don't think that I'm egotistical. I think most people who deal with me find that I don't think I'm egotistical. I can be hard-headed though. So, with that said, I'm going to start my presentation. First, we're going to deal with sedging, and if you have some time, I'm going to try to make this short, and then we will also deal with understanding metaphors, a way to understand the means of understanding and establishing truth in languages, which I think is one of the most important concepts you can try to understand. Okay, the meta-nature word sedging. Now, I have developed a set of ideas that I call good character. Now, in terms of a comedic education, you will find that their point was on character. They were dealing with character development. Western education deals with what? Can anybody? What's the foundation of Western education? Anybody wants to offer something? Competition, that's one. Yes, they definitely promote competition. What's some of the other? Individualism.
Regurgitation.
Yes. You don't have to know, just repeat it. Okay. So all those are true. But the point with all it is that Western education is not concerned really with making a better individual. Because regurgitation and, individuality does not make a strong community. And that's our problem. Our communities are sick because, the educational system. So let's examine some of these concepts. So now, these are Sabayet Jam. These are instructions of fine gold. In meta-nature, the word for fine gold is called jam. Jam. Now, you have to think about it. Fine gold is gold that has been worked It's not raw, you know. So it's gold that has been worked. So that it's not just gold. Now you have made it into something. So you have fine gold. We have to look at our children like this also. They have to be made into jam, fine gold. So I've come up with some charts and some ideas of some lessons that will enable us to instruct our children as fine gold. Okay. Instructions of fine gold. Speak ma'at and do ma'at. This should be taught to our children in kindergarten or at home. That this is your responsibility once you come out of the womb. It is to speak ma'at and do ma'at. Jed ma'at, iri ma'at. Jed ma'at, jed means to speak. You have to speak truth. And iri ma'at. Iri means to do. Now, interesting, look at the word iri. The word iri is represented by an eye, right? Now, this word iri, it means to do, to perform, and a lot of times they will use it, and it means to perform a ritual. But it's an eye. That's because your eyes make stuff. You see it. That makes it real for you. So that the eye, in terms of doing my eye, but you also should see my eye. Because if you can't see it, you can't do it. But all these type of nuances and connections can be seen in this language once you really examine it. Because one of the most important things about learning this language is it has a very strong educational component, instructional component that deals with how you understand life. Another concept in Kemet that's very interesting is this word shedi. Now, shedi means to read, but it also means to nourish, to suckle. So you can see how the people thought. They understood that words were so important that words nourish you. And this is what I've been saying all week, is that that when we think of nutrition, we think of the food you put into your mouth. You can see here that Kemet saw that the words you read nourish you. Now, look at this. This is very interesting. It's the same word. Shadi. What's the difference? In Kemet, I told you that how they throw funk in the language, they use determinatives. So you have the same word picture at the end, let you know what the word actually means. So we have one form of shadi with the man with his finger up to his mouth. This deals with, they let you know this is a human activity. Then the other form, they have a picture of a breast. Well, that's obvious. That deals with nourishment. But psychologically, it ties the person into understanding that what I put into my head is equal to what I put into my mouth. So you see why sometimes I'm so upset, because our focus is on what we put into our mouths, and we talk about this like it's so, profound. So we got all these crazy diets and this and that, and it's like, come on. We have to understand that this is a whole Western perspective that we have fallen in love with. I repeat, if nutrition was all that important, you would have been born with a calculator instead of taste buds. And if nutrition was all that important, how the hell did our ancestors, as enslaved Africans, build this damn country and harvest all their damn food? I repeat, if you read the slave narratives, you see that the people was always hungry. You need to look at what they were, understand their food allotments. Now we're talking about I don't eat this, I don't eat that. Our ancestors had food allotments. That's right. They didn't have the comfort of saying, I don't want that. It's not good for my body. I might get cancer. It's all Western BS that they're giving us with this food stuff. But I repeat, if we examine our culture gives us other ways of looking at the world because they're not Europeans. So, for good mental nutrition, develop a regular reading routine for yourself and your child. Read a variety of books on different subjects. Have discussions about the books you and your child read. And children must be read to from an early age. And that's from the womb. Because when you read, just like when you eat when you're pregnant, you're feeding a child. So when you're pregnant, there should be a special type of literature that you read so that you realize that you are nourishing your child while it's in the womb in a conscious way. Because you're doing it anyway. But if you do it consciously, you do it with a purpose. So, also, these charts will be available. We're out of them right now, but they will be available at Abimi Tumikasa. I recommend, get these charts, study them, and you'll see that they will offer you some means of understanding the world from a different perspective. Okay, these two words are the same, except for their determinatives. To read is related to suckling and to nourishment. Okay? So, these are instructions of fine gold, but their purpose is to produce perfect character. Now, of course, perfect character, yes. In Kemet, they had a concept because, let me show you one way that they represent something that was perfect. And it's so African. So, this is the word, is nefer. Nefer means to, some of you know. Let me get some feedback. What does nefer mean?
Good, beautiful, happy.
Good, yes, good, beautiful, happy. Okay, in Kemet, to make something plural is 3. I told you about the power of 3, right? So in Kemet, plural is 3. So we have 3 somethings that are what? Beautiful or good, right? Mm-hmm. So how would you say that?
Beautifuls?
Yes, right. That's it. See, what you have to understand is that, like, it's a straightforward language, and we tend to sometimes overthink it. Right. Say it again. Beautifuls. Right. Now, what does that mean? It means something that's perfect, and it should be obvious because that's how we think. It's beautifuls. It's beautifulnesses. All of this. It's just, it's how we think. So that's what this means. These 3. Neferu signs, or these 3 Nefer signs, which would be pronounced Neferu because that's the plural form, means to be perfect. Now, the word Ked means character. It also means to build. So you can see how, once again, how the mind works. In Kemet, character is not something abstract because they tell you from the foundation of the word it's something that has to be made. Has to be established. Okay. Then we have the word keperu. Keper. Keper means to change or to transform. So they're showing you that all this has to be a transformative effort. You're not born this way. These are concepts and ideas that you learn so you can transform yourself, your own character, to be a special individual. Now, these are from George Jim James' book, Stolen Legacy. They're not really comedic in the way that we think, but they're practical and good concepts. George Jim James' foundation for understanding comedic thought came from the secret society of, he was a Mason. So most of his information about Kemet can be viewed from that perspective. Now, that's not a problem as long as you understand what his perspective is. He's not telling you these are Kemetic thoughts specifically, but they are based on a Kemetic thought, based on Masonry or from Masonry. Okay, control of thought. Now, you can say, well, and I would say, you really can't control your thought, and I don't recommend that you do. I'll give you a personal experience real quick. When I was a young man, I told you I studied a bunch of crazy stuff. So, of course, I was into positive thinking. So I tried for a year to only think positive thoughts. That was a very interesting experience. I'm glad I did it because it showed me it's impossible. The minute, as a matter of fact, how the mind works by not focusing but trying to focus on only good thoughts, the mind is such that it will make you see in other things that are not that way. So I saw it like, hold up, that's not the problem. It's not control of thought, it's control of action. You can think anything you want to. In fact, I encourage it. Think anything you want to. If you want to cuss somebody out, do it as harshly as you can in your brain. Because you might have to face physical consequences that you don't want to face if you do it personally. So you have to think about that. But in your brain, it's safe. You will find also it will give you a certain amount of emotional release. And that's really what you're looking for. Okay, so control of action more so than control of thought. Then we have devotion of purpose. Devotion. And this is what we really don't realize it has been taken from us and it has been replaced with something else. So that something else is black people now are devoted to the dollar and white people. Because white people control the dollar, so you got to be, So that's who we work to please them. Okay, then you have to have faith in the master's ability to teach the truth. Now, once again, this statement can be a little problematic in terms of I always say that truth is what you believe it to be. Nobody disagree with that. I should get some disagreement. We tend to think the truth is something that exists out there. Nah. I mean, I think it should be obvious that if you listen to the conversations that we've had, truth is what the individual believe it to be. Faith in one's ability to assimilate the truth. Faith in yourself to yield the truth, or what you believe to be the truth. And I would say that pretty much all of us have that one down. We are happy to promote what we believe to be the truth. And all of us do it too. With this one, I stand in line with it myself because that's all I'm doing. I'm willing what I believe to be the truth, but I give you my foundations for my beliefs. That's what I feel is most important. You always, when someone is speaking, you always have to understand the foundation or their background from which they are coming from, their context. Okay. Freedom from resentment under persecution. This one is very hard.
Yes, it is.
Very hard. And
I want to see that in the meta.
I repeat, this is George Jim James.
But didn't you claim it's the principles of Tahuti?
Yeah, but and see,
that's a false claim.
No, I'm not saying that it's a false claim, but I'm saying that you have to understand George Jim James' background. Okay, so he says it's from Jehuti, right? George Jim James has shown no instance that he can understand the text. So that means that he got it from someplace else. Well, how do you know where he got it from was correct? So I tell people one reason I learned how to read this language was because I read. Very few people read as much as I do. And when I was younger, I found that almost everything I read in terms of philosophy and history went back to Egypt. But there was so much contradictory information, I didn't know what was going on. So I met Dr. Ben around that time, and Doc said that, like, if you read somebody, they should give you references. Read their references. I said, okay. So that's what I started doing. I got every reference in George Jim James' book, Stolen Legacy, every one, and I read them. Now, with that said, that I started to learn this language so that I could discern for myself what was actually a Kemetic and as opposed to what other people had said about Kemet. One of my goals, because I had read so much, was to provide some type of clarity and sanity in my own brain, because I tell you, the information about Kemet ranges like from one end of the spectrum to the other. The only way that you can rectify that information for yourself is to learn how to read the text. Otherwise, you're just stuck with saying, I believe it, and because I heard it and it sounds good to me. Okay, freedom from resentment and the wrong. That's another one. Because, that has to be looked at like, what does he actually mean? You don't forgive everyone. As a matter of fact, I had an argument with one of my instructors, a physicist named Robert Paul. Excellent. This brother is brilliant. Matter of fact, he told me that when they were, from his examination of Euclid, that the Europeans have missed one of Euclid's most important concepts. And Kwame, we're going to have a conversation about that sometime. I forgot about that. Okay, ability to distinguish right from wrong. That's another one. Because once again, truth, right and wrong, you always have to understand where the person is coming from. What's their context for right or wrong and truth. Ability to distinguish real from the unreal. And I remember in Asa Hilliard's book, I can't remember which one, but he says that this is one of our people's major flaws. Yes, the ability to distinguish real from unreal. And we don't realize it. One of the reasons is because we have moved away from our cultural foundations for understanding how the world works. So we're caught in a European world that does not fit our emotions, that does not fit our psychological understanding of the world. We have adopted these ideas, so we are all out of sorts. All out of sorts. So I think in this case, Dr. Fuller might have said it best. If you don't understand racism, everything that you think you know will only confuse you. That's the state of our people. So that racism and white supremacy has to be the backdrop and foundation for the most of our actions, because that's the world that we have been, born into. Now, if I can say one more thing, because I mentioned birth, right? You have to realize that birth is not an accident. You chose to be born an African. That's right. Because reality wanted a solution to the situation. That's why we were born. So we're actually denying our birthright because we're so in love with our ancestors. It's with these Europeans. Okay, so these are the 10 virtues that you should place in your heart. So that's what this Bonotchi says. Akaru Medu Rek D-M Eb-E. Now this word Eb is heart. And believe me, we have been brainwashed. We have no idea the power of this word. In Kemet, this is one of the most powerful concepts in Kemet. The whole creation process. Eb is one of the major aspects of it. Well, Eb, as heart, has no reference in the European creation stories. Because God doesn't have a heart. You can tell that by his actions. But in Kemet, the heart and the mind are one and the same thing. There's absolutely no separation. And we do have, there's it here. Okay, now, we have three words here. Once again, you'll see how the people of Kemet, how their mind works in terms of how they tie concepts together that naturally fit in a practical way. So we have the word Saba. We have the first word Saba, right? It means to teach also and to learn. It has a star in it. Then we have the word Saba itself means star. Then we have the word Saba as a doorway. It means a doorway. Once again, in order to give you a more precise understanding of the meaning of the word, they supply a determinative. So let's look at all of the determinatives. So we have the basic sound value, SBA, right there. These two determinatives have no sound value, but they add psychological understanding to the word. So, to teach, we have a star, and we have a man with a stick. So I think some of you who have taken my class may think that I focus on the man with the stick. Well, let me explain you why. If you had Theophilo Binga as an instructor, you would carry a stick too. I like to tell people I was instructed by two entirely different personalities. Obinga, I tell people he was a drill sergeant. That's right. I have never been so exposed and felt like I was naked. The same experience in boot camp was the same experience of learning as meta-nature. In boot camp, you are intimidated, scared to death. Tore it out, right? Obinga was the same way. And he told us that. He beat us up he beat us up so bad one day he felt sorry for us. So we was in his hotel room. He looked at us, he said, "Look, you guys," and I wish I had he speaks French. He has a very French accent. I wish I could imitate it, but I can't. So anyway, he told us though, he said, "Look, you guys, don't feel so bad." He said, "This is what Joke did to me." He said that you have to realize that you have to learn this in a precise way. And as a kid, I took a music class, I played a trombone. And I was always amazed how that a trombone has no frets, nothing. To hit a note, you have to have the slide of the trombone in a precise location. I was always amazed how the instructor could tell that it wasn't, he said, that note, you missed it. Then he would come over and say, "Okay, it's right here. It's right there. This note is right there." This is what he was telling us. You can't do this stuff almost. You have to do it precisely. And so that, now, my other instructor, Riketti, she is sweet as sugar. One of our students said that Riketti, she cut you and you don't even know it's
He said you don't even know.
Don't know, because she's so smooth. I mean, she's just nice. And we would come up with all type of crazy stuff. Riketti wouldn't tell, "No, that's not right. Do it this way." Binga, "No, that's not correct. Sit down." So I repeat, two different instructors, but all based upon the same principle. She was the star in us. She saw us as stars. Obinga saw the students that need to be made in the star. So he beat us up. Anyway, so then we have the star symbol, the word star itself. But the sun is also noted to give you the understanding that, listen, this is a cosmic. We're talking about something that happens not here on the earth. Then we have a doorway. Why? Because teaching is to open up the student's mind so that it can, and this is from Obinga. The star symbol is common to these three words. One can understand that to teach is to open the door of the student's mind in order for it to shine like a star. The sun is the star of the solar system. It brings light, energy, and life. In the same manner, to teach is to bring light and life to the student's brain by touching his spirit. Egyptian instructions fundamentally deal with spirit. That's why they deal with character development. We have to understand, see, we deal with spirit. We think it's something abstract. They understand that character makes you who you are. So character here is spirit, which is you. So these are some of the, this is just a picture of the charts that you will get, and that's it. So we have any questions, comments? Now I repeat, I do have a short one I want to do real quick too, and this one is dedicated to my student Kwame. So any questions or comments?
How soon do you say they'll be ready?
Let me check, because I don't want to speak for. I'm not doing this, so I have to. So I'm going to tell you something that's not going to be nowhere near right. So I will let Arumala. I will let him know when these are available, because I'm gonna try to have it so that he will have some of these also. Okay, now if I could beg your.
Are you still on the Wi-Fi? Make sure you're still on. Do you need the Wi-Fi?
No,
okay.
Don't need Wi-Fi. Should be straight.
No question? Okay.
Comments, statements? Should be something.
When you said that right and wrong,
Yes.
are they, when you right, or if you're wrong, does the right or wrong make you, when you're talking about the personality, you understand what I'm saying? So when you said that, I was trying to get an understanding. When I'm wrong, I don't need nobody else to judge me if I'm wrong. Myself would judge that I'm wrong.
Well, yes, but believe me, other people will also.
Right. Right. That's,
Yeah. No, but I mean, that that whole thing about right and wrong and judgment is a tricky thing. Partly because our European minds have really screwed us up. It's with those concepts. Because to judge that is not necessarily a bad thing, and especially now we don't want to be judged. We don't want our thoughts criticized. We don't want our behavior criticized. So that becomes a problem. But we have to realize that a lot of this came about because of the '60s. In the '60s, we had standards for being black.
That's right.
And that became a problem. So that in the news they start promoting this thing of, who can say what is black? Who has a right to say what is really black? And that's just pure nonsense. Every people have a right to decide for themselves what is right and wrong. But they knew that, like, if they attacked it like that, they would get enough Negroes who listened to white people who would also act as a parrot and repeat those same phrases. When you keep repeating those type of phrases, they become social constructs that people use to understand how shit works. Okay, so this is loading up. Let's see. Fast.
You don't need Wi-Fi for that?
No.
Okay.
I thought it had been saved already.
Bonotchi. So I'm thinking in terms of how we lay these foundations for discerning
Yes.
what's right and wrong. And I know one of the things I used to do is every morning I looked at as a new opportunity. But I start the morning by going through the 42 affirmations.
Yes.
And that, when I felt I was doing something out of line, I'd go through those and say, okay. And then, so that's one level, at the surface level. And then what I found myself doing is going into looking at it. I don't want to be vague, but to say, I look at it from a more metaphorical sense of understanding. So that goes into my, if you will, deep structure of my character and trying to build that up. But I say all that to say that when we give our children the tools for discerning what's right and wrong, then we can help, by them watching us, they can get a better picture of what's going on because they have context for what, I haven't tried to tip the scales when, my brother wasn't looking, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
And things of that nature. But anyway, I'm done.
No, you are correct. You have to take these ideas and put them into your heart, and by that way, you have to talk to yourself with them. That's how you put them into your heart. You talk to yourself about those ideas, because the more that you ruminate within your own brain about them, they will start to make more sense. So I had some power
Many
with.
people have words for right and wrong.
Well, yes, every culture would have words for right and wrong, right? But you have to realize that their right and wrong might have a different context than the way we look at right and wrong. Because for right and wrong, you always have to find out what is their references.
Beginning, that's where it says, I have not. In the,
Well, okay,
that's
right.
what I'm trying to figure
I see
out.
what you're saying now. Okay, you have to be very careful because a lot of the phraseology that we have for understanding comedic thought is not correct.
Right.
And it's out of sync, so to speak. It doesn't fit. So that a lot of those, in terms of what is called the negative confessions, you have to realize that they're not really. We kind of.
That's the program that you use to do the other one, right?
Yeah.
That's off the internet, right?
No, it's on the computer.
Okay.
Okay, and so that they're not. You have to be very careful about the phraseology, and in terms of those negative confessions, that some of those, when you read them, it's obvious that they don't mean the way that we think they do, because some of the things that they say they haven't done, that people did do. So, like I say, it's a kind of a, you really have to get into the culture to understand the people's thought. And we have been trying to understand comedic thought from a Western perspective. So that we have a lot of things turned around. Okay, now let's try this. Yes.
How would you teach young kids, in a classroom? Because, what would you teach them? Content, like.
What would you teach them?
Just everybody. In the Western school system, you bring the kids in, you sit them down on the floor, and you teach them the weather. When you teach them the alphabet, you teach them
apparently, a lot of comedic philosophies.
Yeah, I want to change that mentality. So how do I start my day?
How do you start your day?
With the kids, if we're bringing middle school kids in,
Okay. Now,
how do you do that?
it depends on what it is you want to teach them.
Science.
You want to teach them science.
Okay.
Well, you teach them science. But in Kemet, you have to understand that we're trying to understand Kemet from a Western perspective. So I'm having a hard time answering some of your questions. I know where you're coming from, but they don't quite fit. What you would teach the children, you can start out by teaching the children the language. You can start out to teach the children just some basic concepts. You can teach them Ankh, you can teach them Ma'at, I'm sorry, I messed up. Okay, the word Jed, and the word Sejin, to listen, right? It represents, or is written by a cow's ear, and what's the other?
Oh, quiz. Quiz.
Quiz.
Quiz. Oh, I'm getting it. I'm getting it.
Snake.
Yes.
She got
No, not the snake.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Sedgem.
Pull that stick out.
Right.
Uh-oh.
That is.
We on it.
Kwame.
We reading.
It's the S, the
Yes.
folded cloth, the jet snake.
Okay. Now, sedgem, we have the owl and the ear, right? Okay. A cow's ear. A cow ear, now, it's remember, the word sedgem means to listen, to judge, and to hear, and obey. Okay, now, you can't obey or judge if you don't listen, right? So this is how, once again, how they use their, how they thought. Now, the cow's ear, you can see is why they use that. When you look at a cow out in the pastures, its ears are moving, because first off, it's got its head down eating, so it's got to hear for, stuff that's coming around under might harm it, right? So you can see why they would use a cow, because when you look out in the field, they would see cows, and you would notice the cows' behavior. You say, okay, that would be a good a metaphor to use for listening. Then an owl. What does an owl do? An owl is very intense. It sits quietly and intensely observe the environment. It can turn its head almost in 360 degrees. It has intense hearing. When it hears something, an attack is swift to the point and silent. So, sedgem. We're constantly telling children to sit down, be quiet, shut up. With all the energy they can. But if we ask them to assume the posture of sedgem, and they say, well, what is that? Eunice, this is one thing you can teach the children. So, with sedgem, you tell them, hold up. No, I don't want you to be quiet. I want you to be quiet so that when you act, you'll be more effective. Be like an owl. Be there, be silent, but observe. Keep your listening ears on and observe with your eyes and listen intensely. That way, when you respond more efficiently, right? Efficient and deadly. So this is one of these concepts in Kemet that we can use in our children. Don't tell them to shut up and be quiet. Tell them assume the posture of sedgem. Now, of course, what the Europeans say. Put them in timeout. That don't make no sense. But see, that's once again, they give you a crazy metaphor. They use a crazy sports metaphor.
You're absolutely right.
But this way, you're showing the child first off that you use nature as a foundation for understanding things. So I tell people. I look at a lot of nature shows. Why? Because I like to see animals who portray sane behavior. Y'all look at nature shows too. But all your animals are insane. but it's all animals. It's all animals, right? So I repeat, you look at animal shows also, except you get examples of insanity. I look at nature shows so I can get examples of sanity, not insanity. Okay, so that's what I have forgotten to give you about sedgem. Now, using metaphors, the means of determining truth in language use. What does that mean? Truth in language use. We have to realize that most of the time, how we use languages, especially European language use, is designed to obfuscate. Did I say it right that time?
You did.
Thank you.
Obfuscate.
What does that mean?
It means to purposely confuse. To make things unnecessarily complicated and confusing. To actually take something and make it so that you can't understand what's going on by pure nonsense. It's verbiage. Okay, so nature is the final place of resolution for all metaphor use in language. Nature is the medium that allows all that is to have a common shared experience. So when we try to explain nature, we have a hard time. We come up with all types of crazy stuff. Nature is the environment that allows us to have shared experiences. Say, what does that mean? Well, that means nature is everything because your environment is everything. It's everything. Well, this is comedic thought. We tend to separate nature and all this crazy stuff, but in chemistry they were all the same thing. So, what is a metaphor? Now, most of us have heard this term, but because we speak English, you have to take some English terms to take your mind. So, I'm going to use these English terms as a stepping stone. Eventually, you have to go all the way back to chemistry. But before we get there, I can give you some English terms that'll help you develop a comedic mind so that when you hear the comedic words, you won't be so hung up on European ideas on bad European ideas until you can't understand what is going on. Now, what is a metaphor? Most of us are familiar with this in terms of its languages. Does anybody have an idea what a metaphor is? A metaphor is a device, usually a word that you use to help you understand something that you don't understand. A metaphor is like a stepping stone. It's something that you use to make reference to something else. I'm going to say this again. A metaphor is something that you use to make reference to something else. Okay.
So is that a metaphor, like something like when you say a metaphor, is it something like how they got to it, you know, in that frame of thinking?
Try to take
Or how the story started?
Try to take it's what I give you in a literal way. A metaphor is the use of something to reference something else. Or I should say, a metaphor is a word used to reference something else. Another word, another concept. Okay? So, now, what is truth? What is truth is the wrong question. The question should be, what standards or standard are you used to judge what you choose to believe to be the truth? We need to run this in our brains over and over again. This is very hard for us to get and understand. What is truth? That's the wrong question. The question should always be, what are the standards? What are the practices? What are the beliefs? What is the rubric, whatever you want to call it, that you choose? Remember I was telling you that, like, in terms of truth, what is truth? Now, this is the best definition of truth I've ever ran into. Write this down. Truth is whatever you believe it to be. And you can see that. Have a discussion with someone. What you're going to get from them and from yourself is ideas of what you believe to be the truth. Now, what you need to do, though, is once again, when you have discussion about truth, always establish the standards you use to what you're going to judge to be truth. That will cut down on a whole lot of arguments. We just start arguing without realizing that you're coming from different standpoints and views of reality. You're not going to ever get it. So, perception. What is perception? The result of perceiving or observing. Conception can be a mental image. That's a concept. Right? Okay. Then we have conception. Yes. The originating of something in the mind as the artist's conceptualization of how the city works in 100 years from now. Or, how it will look for 100 years from now, right? But what they're trying to show you, once again, is what? These ideas you hold in your brain. We tend to think of language as happening out there. Language happens inside of your brain. So, we went through this a little bit yesterday. We have to understand that reality is a construct. You make it. And you can see this. I repeat, this is a flat surface. But look how your mind does what? Your mind shows you dimensionality. You know, you got a triangle here. Not only that, you have a three-dimensional triangle. Well, two-dimensional triangle, because you can't see the back. Then you have a square. You have a full square here. You have a box. You have a box. Then from the box you have an angle that comes out here, right? Now, none of this can actually be because this is a flat surface, but it exists inside your brain because that's what you see. But we don't ever, you know, we don't understand that this is how reality works. So that when you look at something, well, for brothers, I think y'all might get this. And of course, since I'm a man, I'm looking from my perspective. But when you see a sister who you find attractive on the street and she's far away, what you should do sometime is watch how your mind changes as she comes into focus. And you can see how that, like, in the beginning, you had a conceptualization in your brain that once you get close, you see, damn, it didn't fit. But it was real to suppose you never saw her up close. That conceptualization that would be real in your brain, just like you saw her. And every time it came up, you would see her
like that.
Like that. That's right. But once again, so what I'm just trying to show you is that, like, even though people say, well, this is optical illusion, yes, but your reality is too. We just don't understand that, like, we get so hung up in what is truth and all this type of thing. So this is just an example to show you how your brain plays tricks. Now,
comment, Brother Bonotchi.
Yes.
You know, after listening to people so long, my mind formulates a picture as to what they look like.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't want a soul in here asking me, what do I look like to you?
Did you say, Kwame, you don't want, you're not, or I should say that he don't want you to know how you look in his brain. Right. You might be upset. Okay. Now, one of the reasons you should study what they call sacred geometry, which I hate. The more proper name is visual mathematics. It teaches you about functional symmetry. So, we are familiar with fractal patterns, right? Well, believe it or not, this is how the world is made up.
Right.
We have all of these archetype designs that come together and make something other than its initial form. But these archetype patterns are all here. So we can see how that really, if you could, this star goes into infinity. All the way back so that you can't see it. But it's a pentagon, a star, but it goes forward and backwards into infinity. It stretches out into infinity and it stretches back into infinity. I repeat, this is how our world works. To get a more sophisticated understanding, we need to start to try to comprehend ideas like this into our practical understanding. Now, something this morning which I heard, but because I was working, I couldn't really focus on. But Brother Tony and Kamal were both showing how that ideas I gave them, they use them as practical application. That's what this is all about. We have to understand that these are ideas I'm trying to give you so that you can use them in ways that I haven't. So that this way, this is how it builds. So I give you an idea. You take that idea and you mess with it. You massage it, tweak it, and then you use it. And what I really enjoyed about their conversations, I said, damn, they really understood what I said. But this is the first law of communication. Write this one down too. You never know what's been communicated until you get a response. So that means that anytime you throw out a communication, you should crave a response, because that's the only way that you know what you said was heard and how it was heard. Okay, now, what do you see here? Can anybody see a pattern there? What does it look like?
I see
Somebody see an animal,
Yeah, I do.
a dog, correct? Now, once I tell you, it should become apparent.
Yes.
Okay. Now, guess what? It ain't there. It's really just a bunch of dots. But what I'm trying to show you once again, the brain form patterns.
Make it a pattern.
You're used to that. Now, the problem is this.
Yes.
The brain does this habitually. When you put ideas in your brain, it initiates thought. It initiates patterns. And so that a lot of patterns we have are set from a European template. When we look at the world, we are conforming it based upon the ideas in our head. So that we make the world from inside of our brain based on the words and ideas we use to understand the world. Now, this one, this might not play. This is very interesting. Let me see. You ready? Yep, it's not going to play. Okay. Yep, it's not going to play. What that shows you...
I'll get you to the internet now.
Okay, go to... if you could go on your computer, go to YouTube and go to sound waves.
This one won't fit none of that.
Okay. Well, what happens is this, right? This is a slate board. It's a big piece of slate. They put salt on it. They just scribble a bunch of salt over it, right? Then they have attached they have attached wires to this big piece of slate, and they're gonna send electrical impulses into this, right? So the salt starts to jump around and stuff, and then it organizes itself into a precise pattern, into those fractal patterns I was showing you earlier.
Yeah.
But so every time they change the pitch, the form changes.
Yeah.
It looks like mud cloth. Every time they change the pitch, it changes. Now, what does that mean? How does it influence us? We have to realize that the words we use also have that effect on the world around us. Now, I don't mean just speaking like that and stuff happen. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's involvement that your pitch is your emotional state. So we have to realize that how we feel about the world influences the world also. And we're not taught that. We're taught that sometimes in the European world, you should ignore your feelings because it's what you think that's important. And Kemet thinking and feelings are the same thing. They have a word in Kemet for your thought that is the foremost of the body. So it's telling you your thoughts are of your body.
So when you was like you just said that, when you were saying when you was being taught and he was teaching you like a drill instructor,
yes,
he was trying to say the pitch that he used was very harsh, but it was also you understood that he trying to save your life.
Yes,
you have to save your life.
Exactly,
Okay.
Exactly, right. He wanted us to understand that too, so that we would come back to class. That's something that I worry about at times. Like, damn, am I running the students away by being too rough? But you guys keep coming back. Alona? Okay, so we have to understand that, like, we engage and construct the world by our five senses. Now, we're taught that that the senses are there for you to engage the world. The senses are there for you to conceive the world. So as much as you feel the world through your senses, you also conceive the world through your senses. So your five senses and your emotions is how you construct your reality. And we don't want to deal with that. The oral tradition of Africa is that words are one of the primary building blocks there are. Along with the five senses, the individual interacts with the physical world with their mind. This is accomplished by way of concepts. Concepts are ideas about something. Some concept of belief is at the root of all action. And words are the primary method that humans have developed to convey concepts, feelings, and emotions to ourselves and each other. But I repeat, These are concepts and ideas you don't get in school.
That's right. Unless you're in my class.
Yes. And I will attest to that because I've met some of our students. And I cannot tell you the joy I get when I'm running to young people who can understand where I'm coming from. We have education have made our people squareheads until it's really hard for them to understand stuff that don't hit them squarely between the eyes, which is how much money can I make? Okay, folks, we just about through. I know I've had y'all here a long time. Okay.
We on the building, man. We on the building.
Well, okay. Let me use another one. I don't want to make everybody go to sleep and bore you to death. Okay, in literature, a metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase literally denoting one kind of object or idea is used in place of another to suggest a likeness or an analogy between them, as in drowning in water. Excuse me. Of course you drown in water, right? Drowning in, in money, in debt, yes. Now, of course, this is a favorite European phrase. And this is also a popular condition. Everybody can raise their hand to this one. All of us, the whole point of being Western is that you drown in debt. I mean, corporations deal with debt. The only problem is this. They can get a relief for their debt. You can't because you owe them. Okay, I think that might be it. Oh, wait a minute, it's stuck. Okay, now, one of the most important things about metaphors I'm going to leave you with is this. Okay, now this is from Dr. Obenga also, and this is one of the major reasons you should study the Mennonite language. The language itself is a philosophical system. And that's what that's the magic of this language that we miss. Now, with that said, all languages represent philosophical systems. But Mennonite is done on purpose. This is mankind's first language. So that means that they incorporated all the magical concepts, and I hate to use magic because then we think of something that's abstract. But because language use is magical, I would definitely keep that. They included all of the nuances and aspects that make language use magical in Kemet. So they encoded that concept into their language use. That's why you should learn this language. You learn a whole different way of conceptualizing the world, a very practical way though. In Western society, they give you complex mathematical formulas that none of us can understand. In Kemet, they give you practical applications about deep philosophical concepts that all of us can readily apply. Hieroglyphics, too, comprise a set of special ontological signs. Physical containers if you recall yesterday, I was showing you how words are containers. Words contain ideas and concepts. Just like food contains minerals and protein that your body uses. Words contain concepts and ideas that your mind uses. Remember what I was showing you earlier? Nourishing the mind and nourishing the body in Kemet was the same thing. And you nourish the mind by the use of words and reading. Okay, physical containers of meaning. They mark a level of substantial discourse, substantial talk, where words engage with nature as vehicle of human value in the larger flux of existence. Egyptian hieroglyphic constituted for the trained eye to see a complete vision of reality. So, what I've been trying to show you is some of that vision of reality that I have learned from studying this language and that I have learned from conversations with my instructors, Theophilo Binger and Gye-Nyame Jones. Excuse me, she dropped the Jones part these days, so much habit, I keep it. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. I thank you all for your interest, and everybody has stayed awake. Thank you very much.
Dua. Asante sana. Thank you very much. This has nourished my mind a lot. Words are so important. Reading is so important.
Any questions, comments? Remember the floss. Remember the first law of communication. You never know what's been communicated until you get a response. So I need to get a response to know if I communicated to you, or to know what I have communicated to you.
Assume the posture of subject.
Yes.
I like that. I come from CB, and teaching young babies to develop their character is what I think that Eunice and I were saying, that how can we use this? Give me something so I can go and be with the babies. And what that does, like you said, that concept makes me think of other things that I know to be able to use and do that. That's good. And even yesterday, when it was asked about how do we use this for our young people, I told you that my response comes from a feedback that I've gotten about our kids, and what happened is they got all this stuff at home, then they had to go to school, and they're like, what in the world is this? And then they would leave school, and what they knew wasn't popular, it wasn't like the rest of the people. So how do I use who I am in my circle, and once it didn't feel good because I'm so different, then you stop doing that. You leave what mama said and what daddy said and all that. You leave it and you assume.
That's why they need African Center School.
Yes. Until it comes time.
Yes.
For them to seek it out. So
yes.
Kalonji got it.
Yes.
Because he sought me out when I was in California with a bunch of other students.
That's
so
right.
we may think.
You make them sensitive.
It didn't go away. But yeah, they do.
Right.
They do.
You're right.
I want to say. I want to share something. I asked you, but you didn't answer. Like Rhoda does this at home with the little people.
Mm-hmm.
She gets to them before they get to school. They get to school, they change the whole curriculum. She has a lot of stories in her journals that she does. You know what I'm talking about? She gets to it before, even if it's like the Western holiday, what comes up in whatever that month, okay? Well, she gets the story, gives it to them. And they look at the others and they don't really get confused because they like the story that Grandmommy already gave them. Mm-hmm. Oh no, that's not the story. Well, Grandmommy
got the story.
I know the story. In other words, it gives them food for thought. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
I like your stories too. I'm in some of the stories, but I like your stories.
Before we continue to ask elder questions, I'm going to be taking up collections. Remember that your donations are tax deductible. We use these funds to continue programming such as this, so we encourage you.
I know, Bonotchi, one of the things that I have.
Hold up. We have a question. I go.
Elder Tony, I go. Just to bring us back. I always use you to do that.
Oh, I go. Amen.
I was just saying, one of the concepts from being with you and around you for so long, that it's always been a challenge for me, coming from the Western perspective, is if.
That's one of the most simplest ones.
No. For me, it isn't. Because when I hear heart, I always go to that which is pumping blood. But it's more than
Heart, mind.
yes.
Right.
It's the heart,
She
mind.
said, right, think of it that way.
Yes,
So
but that's what I
it's
do.
still
But
pumping blood.
yes, and it's still taken in to the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is something I don't think we always think about.
No.
So the heart, mind is going to inform what you think more than the brain.
Yes.
Feeding your brain.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
can hear you, Elder Linda.
Which is something that I think we need to really understand.
Well, you understand it by having conversations about the concept.
Yes.
You know, you have to have a ton of conversations about the concept, then they start to make sense.
Which is another reason I think our gatherings are so important.
Yep.
It gives us a space where we can come together and have these kinds of conversations that you don't have a lot of other places.
No other places.
Right, where we can have, it is so, when Kwame, Lisa, and I get together on Sundays and we have our study conversations, and then we bring them back to Bonotchi on Thursdays and have our conversations, the world is just open. It's just great to be able to talk with people who have similar worldviews.
Brother Kwame wanted me to describe Sejum, is that the word?
Yeah.
How we do it in Gye-Nyame when we call Angalea. It's basically attention.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We train the young people on maintaining an attention when we call it. So is that?
Yeah.
As long as he's satisfied, because I don't want him hitting me with a stick.
So I have a comment, and I think that it relates back to our conversation yesterday about language and God.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about standards used to judge what we choose to believe.
Yes.
And so we have a conceptual system that comes to us from the wisdom tradition of African deep thought. If that conceptual system is our standard for judging what is true, it changes our whole reality, our whole experience. And our challenge is we've been so immersed into the Western's I call it the suboptimal conceptual system, that we're just totally out of whack. We're sick. We'll never become well. So I just encourage everyone to really, really delve into the optimal conceptual system that our ancestors left us. It will just change your life. It'll change your life, and it'll also give you clear standards to judge and choose what you believe. Because in the West, they don't have any.
I have just learned something. See, we learn all the time. That social construct, I'm going to use it. An optimal conceptual
system.
An optimal conceptual system.
Yes.
That is beautiful. This is why, this is what conversation. This is why I was asking for a response.
Right.
Because you get gems from the audience. So thank you. I'm going to use that.
She has a book.
She got several of them.
I've read her books.
I'm just saying.
Oh no, I'm just joking with you. Right, I hear you. She's a well-known author. You're gonna find that, like most people, or I should say, certain people have a similar background, and Dr. James's books have served as an introduction to a lot of people into a Kemetic thought, or into another way of conceptualizing a reality based upon African principles and ideas. So, like I say, her work has been a foundation for all of us for years.
Is there a difference between brain and mind?
Nope. Well, yes. Okay, officially, the brain is the physical organ, that the mind is the, I don't want to, let's see. The mind is the abstract, non-physical part that the brain is the representation of.
Okay. So they interact with each other.
Well, see, that's a problem because
I'm asking.
yes, and no.
Okay.
The mind interacts with everything.
All is mind.
In Western society, though, the brain is looked at as the direct representation of the mind, and that's a problem. So that's why I have trouble answering your question. I know where you're coming from, but you have to realize mind is everything. That's it. Consciousness, the mind, that's it. Nothing happens outside of that.
And that's why it's so important to develop that conceptual system that allows you to have a clear standard of determining what is true. Because what Western people have said is true is false. And what our ancestors said is true, but they've made it false. So just so clear. We're following people who are so far behind
in our
us.
conversations, when we're just talking with people, we'll talk about our mind, and then we'll use brain interchangeably,
right.
almost meaning the same thing. That's why I asked you what's really different.
So it depends on what your standards are. If you're coming from an optimal African conceptual system, all is mind. All is mind. If you're coming from a Western suboptimal conceptual system, your brain is your mind.
The only part of the mind.
Well, now they've come to accept the heart is really informing the brain. So they're slow. Don't be following them. They're 7,000 years behind.
But,
And that's important to say so that you know. So that you know,
See, when you say
Would
you
you
should
don't
be
do that in
following
anything else.
that's important for you to say because then we know.
Okay.
And we wouldn't follow somebody who is that late on anything else. On anything else.
Except
Nobody.
for the school system.
But yeah, I'm saying if you keep putting that up there, young people are a good example that late is not what you'll do. So if they recognize that they just not getting to this, like you said, 7,000 years old.
if you read my books, you will find that I use science, it's modern science, because some of them are on it,
Yeah.
But it's just that, we have to realize that there's a fight amongst them also, because some Europeans realize that we sick, and they are trying to work on themselves. So, I use European sciences too because some of them are on it. There's a guy in California, his name is, I almost said Richard Dawson, but that's not the guy I'm thinking of. Even though Richard Dawson, I think, is I think he's from England. But
You mean Dawkins or Dawson?
Dawkins, right. But there's another brother. In one of my books, I talk about him also. But what he's trying to argue with the Europeans is the same thing that we have said, and that is, he said that unless you can include the mind in our understanding of the world, it's incomplete. So his thing is that, like he said, that like the best way to deal with understanding what the mind is that the same thing that we have said. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's all that is. This is what he's saying. So he's arguing. He's a neuroscientist, and he's having an argument with other neuroscientists trying to tell them that, like, listen, you're examining the electronics or the electrical impulses in the brain is not the final step. So a question I would like to ask is this, right? So they have instruments that they're using to measure the electrical impulses of the brain to find out where thinking and stuff happens and what's going on in your brain electrically, right? Well, okay, the machines have to be calibrated. That means that there's only a certain level that they can measure. How do they know that the signals that they're picking up are the primary signals that's being sent? They don't. But we don't question that. We say, they're deep. They can give you how the brain works because they have machines that will show the electrical workings of the brain. At what level?
And at the end of the day, their character still will be the same.
Exactly. Because they're doing, this neuroscience is not to make a better human being, it's to make a product so they can make money.
And control.
And control, right. They ain't trying to make a better human being. That's the garbage that they feed us.
That's right.
Now I heard this yesterday because I want people here to understand where we are and when we are. You brought up a point. You said it was two groups that gave Obenga hope for what was going on.
Yeah.
You mentioned the group of Detroit, and you mentioned the students at Temple University.
Yes.
This is how powerful
This was
we
the
are.
James students.
Right. That's what I was going to bring up. That's what I was going to bring up. Those same students came through this city right here. Not only did they deal with her, but they also was involved with us over at the African Center for Study and Worship. That's right. So everybody in a sense got the, how can I put it? I go very few places where I really feel intimidated by anybody as far as when it comes to us talking about anything that have to do with us as a people. And I don't really think we recognize what we are, because all of the major names that, in the sense, that comes up out this culture, especially in my generation, were here. Came up out of here. Greg Kamanthi Carr, he went to Valethia Troy X, Mario
Troy Triple X.
Troy Triple X. You know what I'm saying? All of them came through here. All of them sat over there at AP, came through APDS and came down here to the African Center for Study and Worship, and every last one of them set up in my mother's class over here. So I'm just letting y'all know, we can say what Columbus ain't doing.
That's right.
But with all the madness that's going on here, we still have been able to mold and shape some incredible people that came straight up out of us. So I'm just saying. So at least influence them.
That's true. Very true.
Are there any more comments or questions? If not, let's form our unity circle.
Around the table.
Yeah.
All right, family, I want to thank you all for joining us. We're going to take you around the unity circle. And then after that, we're going to close for the day. Where the V at?
Right here. Those posts.
Navita.
I'm so glad we are family.
Someone get Kwame.
We are family.
All right, you good.
And tell the world we are family. And show the world we are family. Take my hand. We are family. You help me, I'll help you stand. We are family. It's a gift from God. We are family. We're so blessed. We are family. We're the people of Africa. We're the African family. Family home in the motherland. Family scattered across the sea. But wherever we have gone, wherever we may be, we're the people of Africa. We're the African family. Forever, we are family. Forever, we are family. Wherever you and I may be, we are family. We're family. There's been so much to take us apart. From today back to that tragic start that brought us us here in pain and fear, far away from all we love so dearly. But every time we were taken apart, we kept the faith. We found a way, we made a new start, loving again and again and again, determined to live and be together forever. We are family. Forever we are family. Wherever you and I may be, we are family. We are family. We said can't nobody turn us round. We said even can't no grave keep our bodies down. We said keep on moving higher and higher. Remember, we don't get no ways tired. So beyond the pain and fear of slavery, across the years and miles of stormy sea, our love has had the victory. We're still the African family.